I mentioned this guy before, but Gerard Van Swieten, who
Mm.
is a real life vampire hunter, and some think he could have been the inspiration behind Van Helsing, who is the vampire hunter in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Mhm.
So this is the story of Gerard Van Swieten. In the mid 18th century, rumors of vampires were spreading like wildfire across Eastern Europe, creating a wave of terror that reached even the halls of royalty.
So people were getting sick with porphyria.
Porphyria, but also people were digging up bodies and saying that they don't look like they're decomposed, so they're vampire.
Right.
They were blaming
It
uh
was it was one of those panics, like the satanic panic and stuff. That was a
so
vampire panic.
this is actually a lot of people think it's connected to vampires because witches were the panic before vampires in the
Right.
15 and 1600s. The witches they were also put to rest by the church, essentially saying like
Mm.
witches are not real. People were kind of over that, I guess. And so the next
Funny the
scapegoat,
church would be like, we've done enough damage. It was just your fault actually.
yeah,
Like they're not real. Never mind the hundreds we've burned ourselves. They're not real.
yeah, you guys can forget about that. Leave us your children, but forget about the witches. So vampires, a lot of people think the vampires replaced witches as the scapegoat for weird
Mhm.
things to go on. So
For the church. The church was like, stop blaming us. Blame
no,
the
no, no, not for the
vampires.
church, for people in the village. So like if something weird happened in the village, people would go, "Oh, there must be a witch. Let's find out who it is." And then they would go on a hunt to the village, and like the palest teenager would be crucified. They'd be like, "Oh, you kind of look like a witch. You have powers, whatever." Or you're like you have
You're
mental,
reading a book as a girl.
yeah, you
Must be a witch.
you or you're mentally ill, screaming, hysteria, you're sick, you're having hallucinations, witch, burn, dead. Then vampires became the scapegoat, which is like, okay, some guy goes out in the middle of the night, gets mauled by a wolf. Witches aren't a thing anymore. Like, let's blame the vampires.
Right.
They eventually replaced witches as the scapegoat for
Mhm.
weird and deadly things.
Mhm.
Um, Empress Maria Theresa of Austria, a ruler known for her intellect and skepticism, had grown increasingly concerned with the hysteria gripping her lands about vampires. The source of the panic was particularly concentrated in a small Moravian village, where villagers claimed that the dead were rising from their graves to drink the blood of the living. Her empire's stability was threatened by the superstition, and she needed someone to bring reason to the chaos. For this dangerous and delicate task, Maria Theresa turned to her most trusted advisor and physician, Gerard Van Swieten. A brilliant scientist of his day and educated by Enlightenment ideals, Van Swieten was a man of reason in an age dominated by fear. Tasked with the mission of investigating the claims of vampirism, he was skeptical but cautious, knowing that fear could cloud his judgment, yet the root of such stories often lay in real disturbing events. Van Swieten set off from Vienna, a lone figure traveling through the mist-shrouded forests and craggy mountains of Moravia. The deeper he ventured into the rural heartlands, the more stories he heard of the undead rising from their graves and stalking the night in search of victims. Villagers whispered of strange deaths, famous families cursed by malevolent spirits, and bodies dug up to reveal unnaturally preserved corpses. By the time Van Swieten arrived in the village that had sparked the Empress's concern, the atmosphere was thick with dread. Houses were shut tight, doors were bolted with crosses, and garlic hung from windows. The locals avoided eye contact, crossing themselves when he passed. The village elder, I'm just imagining him like walking into a village and everyone's just like, "Oh, Jesus," and just looks away from him and he's like, "What the fuck is going on here? Do I smell like shit? What is happening with these people?" Houses were shut tight, doors bolted with crosses, and garlic hung from windows. Locals avoided eye contact. The village elder, a gaunt man with eyes filled with fear and exhaustion, explained that several villagers had recently died under mysterious circumstances, seemingly drained of life.
Mhm.
Some had been found pale, their bodies cold to the touch, with 2 puncture marks on their necks. The elder spoke of a particular grave, that of a man named Peter Plagowitz, who had died only a few weeks earlier, but was suspected of returning from the dead. "This is madness," Van Swieten muttered to himself as he entered the small church where the villagers had gathered to seek answers. He listened to their stories of sleepless nights, of shadows moving outside their windows, of sick relatives wasting away without explanation. Yet he knew there had to be a rational explanation, a medical cause for these strange deaths and widespread fear. Despite his scientific skepticism, Van Swieten agreed to witness the exhumation of Peter Plagowitz, the man whose grave was the epicenter of terror. Under the cover of darkness, accompanied by the village priest and a handful, I feel like if you wanted to take out the body, you would do it during the day. You wouldn't do it while it was dark out. That's just me. Because if he is a vampire, at least he's like, oh, and then
Yeah, right.
problem solved. Under the cover of darkness, accompanied by the village priest and a handful of terrified men holding torches, they made their way to the graveyard. I'm picturing the group of guys with torches, and like one of them's looking at the other one like, dude, why is your hand shaking? Like, are you fucking scared? And he's like, no, I'm not scared. You're scared, dude. And he's like, no, I'm not scared. You're scared, you fucking pussies. And then some guy's like, you're the one who's scared, Brad. I'm not fucking scared. Fuck, I'm a man. I'm a man in the 1800s. I'm such a man.
I've already lived to be 25. Like I've gone through life.
Yeah, I have 6 grandchildren. I'm 28.
I've got 2 good years left at best. This is fine.
Yeah, this is my this is the end for me. Who cares? Under the cover of darkness, they go out and made their way to the graveyard. They're holding torches. The night was cold, and the only sounds were the crunch of their boots on the frost-covered earth and distant howl of wolves. With shaking hands, the villagers dug up the grave. The moment the coffin was exposed, a collective shudder ran through the crowd, similar to the Mercy Brown situation.
Mm-hmm.
The wooden lid was removed, unlike the Mercy Brown situation, and inside lay the body of Peter Plagowitz. To Van Swieten's surprise, the corpse appeared remarkably well preserved.
I love all these guys. They're like, oh, we're like scientists. We know the rates of decomposition on the back of our hands.
No, they didn't. That's the point. Up to that point, no one had really studied.
I know this is the joke. It's
decomposition
just like
under the
I
earth.
love how all these guys are like, oh, we know exactly what a body should look like right now.
Yeah,
They've just kind of made up their mind, being like, oh, this does not look right.
yeah. Oh, that doesn't jive with what I learned in my
This is not what I was expecting.
Renaissance
Therefore,
undead school.
burn it.
Yeah. To Van Swieten's surprise, the corpse appeared remarkably well preserved, although almost as though the man had been laid to rest only hours before.
Don't show these guys mummies. They'll freak out.
Yeah, especially not the ones from The Mummy Returns. His skin.
This guy's 1,000 years old. Nah.
Yeah, I think he's just 1,000 minutes. He was probably buried last week. His skin was smooth, not shrunken by decay, and his nails and hair seemed to have grown longer. More disturbingly, dried blood stained his lips, as though he had recently fed. A murmur of panic rippled through the crowd, and several men fell to their knees, convinced that they were in the presence of a vampire. But Van Swieten remained calm, even though he could feel the unsettling weight of the moment. He knelt beside the corpse, inspecting the body with a detached, clinical eye. The villagers wanted to drive a stake through the body's heart. Within 30 seconds, someone was probably like, I got it. Fuck it, you get the head.
I brought the tools.
Yeah, you get the head, I'll get the heart. We'll fucking throw him in the furnace. Mm-hmm. The villagers wanted to drive a stake through the body's heart, but Van Swieten forbade it. Instead, he explained that the appearance of the body was due to natural processes. He knew that under certain conditions, especially in cold weather, a corpse could decompose slowly. The seeming growth of nails and hair was nothing more than an optical illusion caused by the shrinking of the skin around them. The blood on the lips, he said, was likely the result of gases trapped in the body during decomposition, forcing fluids upwards. The villagers were unconvinced, their eyes wide with fear, but Van Swieten was resolute. He made a point of touching the body, showing no fear of the vampire. He then ordered the body to be reburied properly without...
Can you imagine if he went like... Ignore everything I said.
and that was the fall of science. That was the day science died. And it was just someone playing it was just some guy playing a prank on his buddies, and that set science. It set the science world back 500 years. Yeah. Everyone would still be dying of tuberculosis today if that guy was like Gerard Van Sweeten's like, it's science is nothing. The devil's upon us. Stake everybody.
Can you imagine? That would be so funny too, because it's like, no, you stupid idiots. I know what I'm talking about. See, all this is normal.
I'm the science man. So his goal, he ordered the body to be reburied without grotesque mutilation. His goal was not to disprove the vampire myths, but to restore a sense of rationality in the people, to break the cycle of superstition that had led to fear-driven violence. Upon returning to Vienna, Van Swieten reported his findings to Maria Theresa. He explained, that the rumors of vampirism were unfounded, the result of misunderstanding and fear, compounded by a lack of medical knowledge in the rural areas. His investigation led to the Empress issuing a decree that banned the practice of exhuming bodies and staking suspected vampires. I love how they had to pass a law. Guys, stop digging up bodies in the middle of the night and driving the stakes through their dead hearts.
Guys, leave the bodies alone.
Yeah, they're just like putting a sign on the graveyard like you'd see no loitering. It's just like no stakes through dead bodies.
Show some respect.
They banned digging up bodies and staking vampires, a move that helped to quell vampire hysteria spreading through the empire. Van Swieten's journey to the Moravian village became a cornerstone in the battle between science and superstition, a reminder of how fear of the unknown could drive people to terrifying extremes. His role in dispelling the myth of vampirism was instrumental in curbing the panic that had threatened to destabilize parts of Europe. Like before that, this was one of the stories that spread that people were like, all right, maybe vampires aren't a big deal. But before Van Swieten, this was like I said, like from what I was reading, similar level to a COVID panic of like, we have an infestation of vampires, people going to their local graveyards in the middle of the night and just like, out of like safety, just staking their dead relatives.
To be fair, I don't know if I would compare it to the COVID panic, because COVID was a real virus. It was really bad. It killed millions of people. Like, it's not the same thing.
No, but the level of fear that people had, I imagine it was a similar tension.
Yeah, but like, we were not digging COVID bodies and be like, we better burn them just to be extra safe.
Maybe we should have. Maybe they're gonna come back and fucking be, SARS-V2 vampires.
We're fine now.
We'll see.
They would have come back by now.
If we get COVID vamps, that's on you.
All right. I'll take the blame.
Though the vampire legends never completely died, they were pushed into the realm of folklore, leaving behind a more rational understanding of death and disease. In the end, Gerard Van Swieten did more than just solve a mystery. He helped guide a frightened people out of the darkness of superstition and into the light of reason, standing as a symbol of enlightenment in the age that still clung to the shadows of the past.
So he's not a vampire hunter. He's like the first guy that was not completely blinded by this by the madness.
Sure, but he likely inspired Van Helsing, who was a guy in Bram Stoker's Dracula who hunted vampires in a way. Like I just meant more of like the Queen of Austria was like, we're having vampires complaints in our fucking empire.
Go check it out.
Yeah. So in that sense, like he was hunting down the source of what people were calling vampirism.